Jessica, this is our second field trip.
Field trip!
Field trip!
Field trip!
And do you want to tell our listeners who we talked to and where?
Yes. Well, we are so incredibly lucky that our friends of the cast are so kind to us and such interesting people as well. Although that makes me sound like Bugs Bunny with the red monster, Gossamer, being like, "You're a very interesting monster. You must know a lot of very interesting people." But we do. We know a lot of interesting people, and we've had the good fortune to, for our second field trip, our friend who we just adore, Dylan Hundley, who is the founder and lead singer of the incredibly cool band Lulu Lewis that we've talked about on this podcast, reached out to us and said, "You want to hear some New York stories growing up? Here we go."
Crap.
So
did she have stories?
Yes. And she, Dylan, met us at a classic New York City watering hole. We met at J.G. Mellon, home of real, I don't know if it's even great chili, but it's J.G. Mellon chili. And
we
good.
ate
that chili.
And it was great.
And their burgers are very good. But we met at J.G. Mellon, and Dylan told stories about her coming to New York as a kid, growing up here, and how a bunch of the stories that we've talked about on the podcast have actually touched her life personally. So I'm excited that we get to share what she shared with us, with our listeners.
Here we go. Field trip, field trip, field trip, field trip.
By the way, I'm going to order something to eat.
Me too,
Are
because
you
we
guys
can't be.
interested in doing
I
that?
can't be at JG Mellon's and not order the chili.
Yes. This is what I'm thinking.
We gotta have some chili.
I think I'm going to do a chili too.
Like, because it's a chili kind of day.
It is
literally.
a chili.
You know, I fell in love with music really young. Like, you know, my recollection is 7 or so, and first introduced by my sister. Again, 7 years older. Walking into her room, seeing the B-52's like first record, bright yellow, staring at me. Well, she's got like, you know, the Immigrant Song like blasting on the stereo. I'm like, what is this? You know, this is awesome. So yeah, I mean, so my passion for music, like, and then, you know, the first band I loved was the Police and the Clash, and then being the age we are, then discovered Duran Duran, was like. It's all about Duran Duran, and then I became listening to WLIR and, you know, Susie, The Cure, Depeche Mode, all of those bands, which I still hold really dear in my heart. And yeah, it was always that, and film were always my two greatest passions, creative passions, right? I do need to like frame all this stuff properly as well, because one of the other things that was happening is like, you know, like many of us, like living in a very, very dysfunctional family that was completely falling apart, right? So I had, again, like very little guidance surrounding me. And so when I started going to the clubs when I was 13, I was like club kid, like full on, and, you know, became addicted to drugs and alcohol very quickly. So that was also that world of whether it was Upper East Side here, whether it was like Dorian's or Zulu or whatever, all of those places became home. And then I started going downtown, right? And that really became home because I related much more deeply with artists, right? And with all those scenes, you know, at Area and Palladium and all the clubs downtown, and really became a part of that scene. And that's when I met like Brett and Jay, you know, amongst all of that. And that's, yeah. So there was Krista, and she was a few years older. And then there was Amy Lumet, who was one of Sidney Lumet's daughters. She was also a few years older. And both those girls were deeply, well, even Amy even more so, deeply embroiled in that downtown scene. And I became their pet. You know, and I thought of this analogy today. It's like my family, we moved here when I was 10. So I don't come from this old money family, right? We moved here when I was 10. My dad was becoming a great success, right? He was in the hotel business, and he was, you know, working for large hotel corporations that started his own. And so we were like almost like nouveau riche, really. compared to like, the other folks. And it was a lot of chaos. But the weird thing about it is it was total drug riddled chaos. But, in the house of extreme wealth surrounded by rock stars. Literally. My love for acting and my love for film and my love for theater is real. Like, that's who I am. I'm a performer, right? And so my aspirations there, that I wasn't able to realize, I wanted to be Gina Rollins. Like, I was thinking about, like, she's like, but along those lines. I wanted to be a great character actress. That's what I wanted to be. And that's what I trained to be. I found the old theater director, a guy named Ron Stetson, who was over at the neighborhood playhouse. So I found him, and he, had classes outside the neighborhood playhouse. So I jumped into a summer program. It was me and Noah Emmerich, who's the most amazing actor. It was Noah's first class. It was my first class. And, you're an actress, until we got there, I was like, oh, this is home. This is where I belong. So then I got into a 2-year program with him, and in the middle of that got Metropolitan. And I got Metropolitan because of the klutz. Oddly enough, because the impresario Bear Jones, right?
Yes.
Fucking party promoter.
Yes.
He knew me, and he knew that I was, wanting to become an actress, and he knew Wit. And he knew Wit was making this movie. So he introduced me to Wit.
Hi. We're doing interviews.
We are.
My opinion?
Okay.
Absolutely.
What's the question? What are we talking about?
Ooh, we should ask a good question.
What would you like to talk about?
Dating
Okay.
in your 50s.
Oh, join me, my sister.
Oh,
Yes.
man. I went on Hinge and I went through every one, and they're like, there's no more for me.
No.
That's it. I went through every one. I tapped out Hinge. I'm waiting for new joiners.
Try the league. You'll be equally disappointed.
Oh, man. I'm about to go on Silver Singles, I think. I'm going to try that one.
No, it's
It's not time yet.
Not
It's
time yet?
Time yet.
All right.
No.
What are we having? Cup of chili as your entree or to start? You want cheese and onions on there? Cheese, no onions. You got it.
Wit's an interesting dude. Yeah, so Baird introduced me. Yeah, and I went and I read, and I think I went for one callback. I think he originally had me in for Cynthia and then bumped me to Sally. I don't know. Again, we moved here when I was 10, this is the analogy that I want to use. It's like, this is like, the Upper East Side is a lot like a family that I grew up in where I didn't really fit. Like, I don't really, it's actually, whenever I come to the Upper East Side, I'm like, I get this really uncomfortable feeling in the pit of my stomach for a number of different reasons, because because I don't have family here anymore. They're all gone. I'm the only person left in New York. And it's this weird thing. It's like, so it was home, because this is where we literally lived, wherever you're living with your parents.
formative years.
Your formative years, where a lot of shit happened.
Yeah.
You're going to have that connection to, like, my connection to this place is because of that, not because of Metropolitan, right?
Right.
This is something I've never shared. It's like, we were shooting that film up here, mostly night shoots, right? Because the majority of the film, was quote unquote my character's house.
Right.
This was a classic independent film. We made this thing in 30 days, working mostly nights. We'd get there like 5 p.m. and be done at 6 a.m.
Wow.
For 2 weeks solid, which was fine with me because it was okay with my schedule.
Right. Club time.
And, sometimes I would leave, we'd finish, and I'd go down to save the robots. So I was still trying to live my downtown existence while, putting on the pearls. To all of us, we had no idea whatsoever.
Right.
It was this tiny little thing. We shot in front of the plaza, we just stole the shot, right? So we just showed up, and we were all exhausted at that point. I remember in this giant white dress, in the back of this little van. And I saw a light in front of the plaza, and I remember going, oh, they're making a real movie over there. Whatever. I was happy to be there. Also high. It was everybody's first film. All of the actors, it was all of our first films. So we were just all kind of like muddling through.
Right.
Pretty much. there was one like giant one room that we would all get dressed in together, and hair and makeup was there too, and it was all just like being like in a school play. So that film, okay, we started going, we started getting picked up at the festivals, and I was like, this is what I wanted to do. So, and actually I was the first of the cast to be like, okay, I'm here to lend my support to whatever it is we need to do. And it was really fun too. It was at the Angelica, and it all felt like, this is exciting. This is cool. This is what I want to do. And then we got accepted to Sundance. And at the time, Sundance at the time was still small. It was still like cool indie, whatever. But I was literally the only cast member was like, I need to go. So I went to my dad. I was like, Dad, please, can you please get me a plane ticket and help me get there? And we had that screening. We had the screening at Sundance, and that was it. It got covered by the New York Times. I remember it so clearly because it was like this spark. It was a wild ride. So it was like 2 years so then everybody jumped on.
Right.
Because then a few months later, we all went to Cannes, which was a fantastic experience. It was like, and we were just kids. I mean, so like in retrospect, it was so cute, honestly.
I know, it sounds like a hell of a lot of fun.
It was really sweet. We had a lot of fun. And I moved quickly. I moved to LA, I think, on my own, like 9 months later.
Okay.
And I just started auditioning. I was learning how to drive. I had my Thomas guy. I was driving all over Los Angeles, just like by myself. Like my dad had a hotel out there. I remember like getting on, like flying out there with like 6 pieces of luggage, just like setting this hotel and turning it into my apartment, and just like I just figured it out.
Field trip, field trip, field trip, field trip.
I was auditioning and, was auditioning for a lot of like the biggest roles at the time. Right. And for a couple years, it was, it would be between like me and like 2 other girls. So it was like between like me and Ione Sky and me and this, and I kept not getting it. I kept losing it to those girls, which was crushing, but for so many reasons it didn't happen, because also, I mean, like, it's not like my drug and alcohol problems. I mean, they were actually just escalating. I got out there, and the more and more disappointments, I just went deeper and deeper into that party world of Los Angeles. And
did you have a support system out there?
My mom moved out about maybe, I don't remember how long it was, but maybe 6 months after I did, she got a house. And my mom, as sweet as she was, my mother was a lovely, sweet, kind, giving human who was also deeply inept. She didn't know how to parent her own. Her love was clear. But she spent most of the time buying me things, because we had a lot of money, right? That was all she knew how to do in the face of her daughter, who was a complete storm. My addiction was so profound. And I remember actually showing up to an audition for Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh my goodness.
Completely out of my mind. Not out of my mind, but just like so profound, like still like a little bit high from the night before, like somewhere between like high and hungover, just crawling to audition for that. And like, that was a really dark day. Hollywood is a very unkind place, So year one, I'm like, ooh, Sundance, come, Academy Awards.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's a heady place to start.
very heady place to start. I was a child.
Yeah.
But also for the people on the other side, on the business side. And they're just vampires. So my first agent was a little boutique agency. And I remember it was like, she was essentially handling me, Alexis Arquette, and one of the Arquette brothers, and James Russo. We were like her 3. It was like a weird combination of people, and she had others too, but I was friends with those guys too because of that. But anyway, and then I got lured. It was at the Academy Awards. I was at an Academy Awards party, and I was at the head of William Morris at the time. The movie's nominated, and he chases me out to the car at the end of the party, and he's like, I need to represent you. Kind of thing. I was like, oh, cool, great. So I dumped my nice little boutique agency, and I go over to William Morris, which was a massive mistake. It wasn't the head of William Morris. I can't think of John. I can't remember his name. He wasn't taking care of me.
Right.
He put me to this other guy who I'll remain nameless. I remember a real moment for that too. It was like, the word came around like, Coppola was doing Dracula. And I called him and I was like, listen, Glenn. And these are the days of like answer machines too. But I called him and I got him on the phone. I was like, Glenn, I'm like, you need to get me in for this. Because I'm like a freaking goth at heart as well. I'm like, you need to get me in for this. He's like, Dylan. He's like, let me tell you something. He's like, everybody in town went in on this. He's in on this. He's like, it's not going to happen. blah, blah, blah. Let it go. Then, a few days later, Coppola had seen Metropolitan and freaking tracked me down.
Are you kidding?
He came and tracked me down. I get a voicemail from like one of his assistants on my home, like how he even like pulled this off. And then I called Glenn. I was like, "Hey, dude, obviously I didn't get the job. Sadie Frost got the job, and I was crushed." And I think it was like just like one thing after another. I remember there was another one where I auditioned for Sean Penn, which was like a moment I'll never forget. It was like incredible for the Indian Runner, for the first time I ever directed. It ended up being Patricia Arquette got the job. I know, but I spent like 45 minutes with him in the Chateau Marmont, him directing me, and it was awesome. Anyway, but the story is like, yeah, so I was wholeheartedly throwing myself towards this. And again, because of Metropolitan, like this gave me this entree in terms of the social world. So like this whole universe of very hip young Hollywood, and Donovan Leitch, who's, so Donovan was one of my best friends, and, I was really close with him, and as, and Ione was around, and Stephen Dorff, and even River Phoenix, like all of these people. So I was hanging around with them, but then I also had, like, I always kind of liked hanging out with older people, frankly. I was always drawn to two things: people a little bit older who I admired, and rock and roll. Then all of a sudden, like one day I found myself, I didn't have an agent, I didn't have a manager, but I was house DJ at the Viper Room. Then I was in that world, like full on. I was house DJ there. Quentin Tarantino was my next door neighbor while he was making Pulp Fiction.
Good Lord.
Which was a whole, like, and we had a bizarre friendship because I was dating Harvey Keitel. And then I was also in Mick Jagger's Entourage, like for real. And so like, that was my life. That was like my day-to-day reg. I was having a lot of fun and also dying at the same time. And I was still just a kid. I was 22, 23 years old. And this was my world. Because also you got to remember, I didn't have to worry about money. I didn't have to work. Mom was there and Dad sent me a check every month. And it was plenty. I was hopelessly addicted. I was really.
And what are you addicted to at this particular point?
It was just cocaine and booze. Those were my two main things. I tried probably everything, but those are like that. I was a slave to those things. But then I just was really sad. I was very close to death. Really was. A few of my friends started getting clean. I remember one of my closest girlfriends got clean. So that Sherry was her name, and she's a whole other story. She's quite a character. I went to a meeting with Sherry. And I remember sitting down in the meeting and I was 25, and it was this massive relief. I heard people talking. I was like, oh my God, other people feel this way. Like, I had no idea. I thought like, I didn't know what was wrong with me, but then I got it and I got clean. And, I think like I got clean like 2 weeks. Then I went out like one last night, and I was done, and I've been done ever since. I got clean. Yeah. Then I met another rock star.
Field trip, field trip, field trip, field trip.
Somebody I'd met earlier. So one of my best friends from when I was 17 is a guy named Jimmy Rip. He's one of the most famous, or best known live guys ever. Mm-hmm. So the roster of people, that's how I met Mick Jagger. He played with Mick on all of his solo tours over, which were quite a lot in the 80s. Also played with Hall & Oates. Kid Creole and Tom Verlaine, right, from television. I met Tom in the early 90s through Jimmy, and then we met again at a Patti Smith concert. I remember being up at Jimmy's house, and Patti was playing down at the Roxy. I'd never seen her before. And I was like, Jimmy, I want to go see this. And he was like, I'm on the list. He's like, I'll meet you down there later, whatever. And I go to the Roxy, and Tom was actually playing guitar with her. And we'd get in on a few songs, and there was Patti. And Tom was playing, and it was this hot, sweaty. It was just amazing. It was life-changing. So Jimmy eventually shows up. He brings me back. We all end up going to dinner afterwards, and we're sitting at a table, a place called Swingers. It was great. And Tom was sitting right across from me, and he was just staring at me, and we just started staring. I started staring back, and we just start laughing, and we're like, okay. And we just started one of the most amazing love affairs. He started writing me letters. And then I went on tour with him and Patti. Also one of the most amazing experiences of my life. So I met them over in Europe, and I went on tour with them. And watching that show every night, all of them, her, every night for like 14 nights was incredible. We went on this tour and got back, and decided he came to visit me in LA. He actually offered to move to LA first. And I said, you know what? No, I want to go home. I came back and there was still money. My dad, I got a good place to live in the West Village. And I was with Tom. I was deeply in love with Tom. I never connected with anything hugely commercial as an actress. I'm going to go try and make independent films. And actually Harvey, because we always remained friends, Harvey put me with a great teacher, a woman named Marcia Halfrecht. And I studied, actor studio for 5 years. And, did black box theater and little films. And Tom and I broke up, started going out with guys my own age. started hanging out with people my own age. And I was like, okay, yeah, I was just trying to make this normal life for myself. Working on my mental health, in group therapy and one-on-one therapy, working hard, getting there. 5 years, 5 years of that. Then my dad got indicted on 33 counts of bank fraud. I'm in my therapist's office, and she's like, Dylan, she goes, there's this article about your dad at the New York Times. And I was like, I knew that he was struggling. We all knew he was still struggling with some stuff. But, the dynamic of how we lived was he was the king. He took care of a lot of people. We were very rich. I like private planes. I think it was just, we were all just comfy. I had what I thought was my inheritance, coming to me down the road. This little bit of trouble he's having here and there. It's this is just part of being a huge empire. So I got home, called my dad. I was like, Dad, Alice, my therapist, Alice told me about this article that, you've been indicted. And he's like, quiet. He's like, how did she find this arcane? I'm like, it's the New York Times. And then on that same phone call, he says, yeah, he's like, you're going to have to figure it out. I'm 33, by the way.
Right.
There was never anything to figure out.
That's a sucker punch.
To say the least.
It's terrifying. That's absolutely fucking terrifying.
You're going to have to figure it out. Yeah. So there I was in my loft on Leroy and Hudson with whatever extraordinary rent I had and used to getting my monthly whatever and my BMWs downstairs. And I'm like, so thankfully I had some friends. I had good friends. And a bunch of my friends ran and worked at NARS Cosmetics. So my best friend was there, the CEO I knew, and she was also my friend. And they I went to them and they were like, I had no skills. I was good at parties. I'd never really had a job. Ever. No, not really. I knew nothing. Nothing. So they took mercy on me. They're like, okay, why don't you come? First they gave me some little, really super ed mini project of literally it was sticking lipstick labels and blush labels into binders and whatever, thank God. And they paid me for it. And because my dad was he was sell the car. He's like, you're going to have to move. You're going to have to figure all this out on your own. But yeah, so it was quite a bumpy few years to say the least. Trying to figure out how to learn how to take care of myself. Went through my father's trial down on Pearl Street for a year and a half. And you know what? I only noticed this recently. Loretta Preska was the judge presiding, and I just noticed that she was the judge that presided over Ghislaine Maxwell's thing. I was like, I know Loretta. I watched her for a year and a half. At the end, having to stand up after he lost. And then my dad asked me to please make a speech. Please write a speech for me, which I did. And I had to stand in this courtroom with, the Supreme Court judge and the FBI and the Justice Department and make a speech as to why you should be lenient with my father's sentence while I'm drowning.
Right.
Then he went to jail.
Field trip, field trip, field trip, field trip.
The feeling of having a parent in jail is really very unsettling. I felt unsafe constantly and always walking around for years. I had this incredible burden of secret. Always carrying this horrible secret, not just with everything about my life, because everything was ripped from me. Everything. So I didn't there's nobody to fucking relate to on that. It's there aren't many people that have that exact experience. So again, within all that, I had my rock and roll friends, and again, rock and roll is this is where I'm safe. Stay with the musicians. Stay with the music. I'll be okay here. And then I met my son's dad, Chris. His first couple of years were okay. He's a guitar player. I like guitar players. His first couple of years were okay. Then we had Harper, who is, I hate saying a gift because everybody says a gift, but he's incredible. Like, I'm so lucky to be his mom. I love being his mom. He's a wonderful human being. I'm very happy that he's here. My relationship with his father was very, very challenging. I was with his dad for a long time. His dad abused me horribly. So like his dad was in jail. The relationship, I start seeing like, oh my God, I'm with this person that is actually not a good guy. My mom moved in with us for a while, so I'm trying to take care of her too. Trying to earn a living, and it was very bad. It was very bad. It was like a prison for 7 years. Do you want to recognize me? I was focused on, I need to take care of my son. I need to keep a roof, food on the table, and try and take care of my mother the best I can. And then the rest is like, it was just that. I was only that while living with a person that was just telling me that I was garbage every day, all day long. For 7 years. Again, I looked like shit. I felt like shit. And so like the whole burden of like secret just kept getting worse and worse because this guy, he would present as this very charming person socially. I used to call it running for mayor. He's really, really social guy, like really sweet, with all the people, all the other families we're hanging around with. And I was just in a corner looking at all of my life, including that. I didn't think that there was any hope for me whatsoever. I thought, okay, I'll survive this. Maybe I'll make it to, when Harper's 18 and then I can go lay down somewhere. It was bad. It was really bad. And I would try to reason with him and say, I would try to reason for many, many years. Like, listen, and at the beginning, I was like, you and I don't get along. Let's just go our separate ways. We have this wonderful child. Let's just raise him amicably. And it's just abuse. I actually don't want to repeat too much of what he said, but it was bad. And he refused to leave, refused to let me go, refused. And there was some physical abuse. It was constant verbal abuse, constant psychological abuse. And I knew that the only way that I was ever going to be free of him was if I went to the police. So I went to the Women's Justice Center a few times. And finally, I think it was the third time after he threatened me verbally, and I had it on text, and I'd gone to the police about it. And then I'm just going to keep this part really short. I finally reached the end because of a series of events. And I went to the Women's Justice Center. I filed for the restraining order, got it, went home, collected my son, took him to dinner, waiting, knowing that they were going to show up. And I took him. And that was it. Thank God. Which was one of the best things I ever did. This is really hard for me to talk about. Because it's so connected to my son. This is all on the Today Show, by the way, because I actually went on Meg and Kelly to talk about it. So it's not like, it's like this. Then, I met Pablo. Yeah. Pablo and I are best friends. We connect on so many different levels. There's the music. It's we grew up very similarly. Everything that we love, the people that we are, it all just came together. And the music I've been trying to do for years. I actually started with Tom Verlaine, and Tom actually heard what I was doing, and he tried to help me and stuck me with a producer, and it didn't work out. Then I sat in my crappy little apartment in Jersey City, trying to make demos because I had all these ideas and didn't know how to play anything. Thought I sang okay, but was still really timid about it. It was and tried and made all these really funny little homegrown demos on my own. I made them, and so then when Pablo and I, because we bonded so much over music, when I brought in my little demos, I was like, can we try? Can we just do something? Please? And at that point, I'm in my 40s, I'm all I want, I just want to make, first it was just one song or just maybe an EP just for me. Nothing else. I just want it for me. And then he heard it and he was like, oh, this stuff is pretty cool. And him no big deal to him because he's a producer and engineer. He just sits around like making shit all day long, right? So he took it and he made a song out of one of my songs. I sang it, which was like such a big deal for me. Like stand in front of the microphone. I was like, I'm going to do this. And we did it. And it came out. And I was like, oh, we did it. And then I'm like, can we do another one? And then we did like another one of my songs and they were cool. Then I made a video. I was like, I'm going to make a video. Like I always wanted to do this too. So, and it just started spilling. It's just everything, just like, and then I never thought in a million years that I would ever have anything ever that I wanted. Not really. I mean, like other than a child. Like I had Harper, but in terms of like any kind of creative fulfillment, professional fulfillment, Metropolitan was the only thing. I was never able to like do anything beyond that. Never, ever. And then we started making this stuff and we were madly in love and the shit was cool. And I was like, yeah, let's play live. I want to try that. I want to do that. I want to see what it's like to go stand in front of a band and do this. And he already had these amazing musicians that he'd been playing with for years. And we started rehearsing. And we started playing together. I was like, oh shit, we're a band. Like, this is cool. Okay, let's do this. And then we booked our first show. We did our first show. It's a club called Berlin. And all these people turned up to support us. And I did it. And I was like, I'm good at this. After all this, I actually am this thing. I remember the third show, we got invited to this show down at the 9:30 in DC. This with all these punk icons from DC, and they like what we were doing. And sort of friends of Pablo's and whatever. They're like, we like what you're doing. Can you cover these two songs in tribute? And again, we're at the sound check and we do one song and Bob Boylan from NPR comes running to the stage. He grabs a music stand, pushes it out of the way. So he's like, people need to be able to see you better. And can you imagine after all of that?
Field trip, field trip, field trip, field trip.
That was such a fun night. I want to see her again.
She's awesome.
She's so great. She's so fucking cool.
She's cool. She's smart and cool and real, honest. Just we're lucky. It's always amazing when you get to make new friends as a grown up. And I feel like we're very lucky. Yeah, so thank you, Dylan.
And Dylan said that we could share this piece of her music.
Yay. So everyone stay in your seats and listen to the latest offering from Lulu Lewis.
Don't panic. We have all been through this. Thinking, have we ever met before? We loved for a minute, left just like this. What did you do the night before it all burned down? Welcome to Dystopia. Messed up on this trip.